All right, this isn't the best video setup, so I guess we'll have to see if I can make this more stable in the future. You can see my hands though, so we're gonna try this. All right, so quick how-to. You've got a test flower kit. You probably have either small ones, which are done in cardstock. Let me just see if we can, yep, or bigger ones like this. You probably have gotten in your kit either small yellow things like this, or bigger ones. And then in the case of the smaller ones, you'll have pom-poms. The bigger ones, you may have strips that look like this. So I'm going to just show you this simplified flower making thing. We're not doing the individual foil petals or the, the flowerette petals today. So what our goal is to end up with something that looks like this. And these are suitable. Let me give you an example of a final product. So for final product, we're aiming for something like this or like this. Okay, so that's our goal. There is something a little bit tricky in that I got one of these from Sizzix. This is actually a part of a kit that includes 2 of these and the tweezers. You can get it off Amazon. It's called a paper craft kit. However, for our purposes, if you don't have one, you can use a ballpoint pen. But the other thing I'm going to show you is there's a mat they have. I'll show you why this is helpful when we get to there. If you don't have it, you could probably use some kind of felt or just use your hand to start shaping things. So we'll just do a simple one. So I'm going to use just a regular Elmer's glue. This is a clear one, but you can use a craft glue. These are all sold at your store. You might find this at a Target, or if you don't have that, you can go to Michael's. I actually checked out on Michael's yesterday, and they have like millions of kinds of glues. It doesn't really matter. Cardstock is pretty friendly to gluing, so you could use whatever you want. But the reason why I like this tool, so first let's make sure your kit's gonna have a 7-petal flower and a 6-petal flower. And this is unusual because most paper kits for flowers, it should have 8 and 6, because in reality, in nature, usually you find more even numbers with many petal flowers. But anyways, so the nice thing about the Sizzix thing is what you're gonna do is you shape your flowers by like rubbing the edge of the shaping tool like this. And I just do it in a circle because I probably will shape this more myself later. But as you can see, it makes it nice and curved. Now this might relax later and it might not stay in shape because this is a hard, kind of a heavier cardstock, but on paper, it tends to get flat again over time. But in any case, I'm gonna use the same tool on both flowers. And I may come back to these later and I'll show you what I do with those. But this is now pretty easy. I have a small, I'm gonna grab one that's maybe a little bit better perforated. These were my test ones, so they're not perfect. Grab that. I recommend also shaping this. You don't want to use the big one. You could use a smaller one, but I'm probably not. It's not gonna matter because I'm gonna put a palm in here. And very simple. This kind of paper is super great with normal glue. Let's make sure my glue is not clogged up. I might have a glue problem here. Sometimes it seals shut. So I'm using the tip of the scissors to just pull off that glue. It's just a little dab. Now I usually do this in stages, but for the sake of today, I'll do it like this. You see I turn it slightly. And I could have waited, we could have done the other part, but we'll go through and do one. Okay, so I put a light pressure on there, and then I'm gonna leave it alone because I'll come back to this later. It's easier to shape it without the palms in. In the meantime, let me grab one of these. We'll fix it up a little bit. My paper cutter. So not perfect. So again, I'm using the discards, but we're gonna repeat the same thing on the larger flower kit really quickly, but then I'm gonna do that other step to show you something. So in this case, I'm using the larger end. This might actually take a little more work. So you can see I'm doing like a circle in the middle, putting some pressure on this mat, and then depending on your paper, you're gonna have to test this if you do it on your own. You might wanna also go back and forth in the petals too. This is not gonna get me where I wanna go, so I'm gonna end up manually shaping this later. And honestly, I'm one of those people who shapes a lot anyways after the fact, so I probably will come back and manage this myself. And by that I mean like just taking in your hands and kind of giving it, I don't know what someone used to call it, zhuzh with hair. I don't know if it's Fat 5 or something back in the day, but as you can see, I'm just kind of putting a little pressure on it. Because reality, when you look at the flowers, they tend to be more like anemones if you want to look at the real life example. So, okay. Now since my glue bottle's open, I'm gonna go fast because I don't like my glue to dry over and crust over and then make it unable to be used. So I'm gonna turn this slightly, put a little bit of pressure in it. So I actually like sealing it by putting pressure on it, and then I'm gonna set it aside while we deal with the interior part of the petal. Now I may later go back and change the design of this because I like it to be a little bit more boxy. And again, we're gonna come back and once this is sealed, I'm gonna shape this a little bit more, but looks like I have to move it over a little bit. So I wanna do that before obviously it dries. Make sure, yeah, see it's not exactly where I want. It's a little bit off center probably. Some of you will be a little OCD when you see me do this. But okay, so I'm gonna set this aside for a second and let's pick this back up. So again, with the smaller ones, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna put that in once it's a little bit drier. And then for this, you may wanna get a palm, but I'm thinking of including these. So these are rolled. Now I am not good at rolling. So what I may do is I may start rolling it on this tool. So this is not only is this a roller, but if you're into paper quilling, like you see that they use these kind of edges to roll. I need a little bit of help getting it started since my fingers are not so good. Oh, you know what I should have showed you is how to use a ballpoint pen, the back of a ballpoint pen for the other one. So hopefully I remember that in a second, but okay. I'm starting it here and I'm gonna just put a dab of glue along here a little bit. Oops. And then I'm gonna try and roll it just a little bit. Now this might be messy. I should make it a little bit tighter, but not good at that, so we're just gonna get this started. Now if you don't like this, you can roll it all the way and then glue gun it. I use Gorilla Glue and it's pretty good at smashing stuff into materials. Okay, so I started the roll. I'm gonna do a little bit more glue to help. Think of this as like how you wrap food in like wonton. Okay, see, just keep going. You may want to finish the edge a little bit. Be careful, it's gonna be super messy, isn't it? Yup. All right, so let me just hold it for a second. Obviously, if you're using a glue gun, it's much faster. You don't need to sit and wait like this. But I'm gonna hold it for a bit and then hope that it sticks. If not, you can always come back in here with a little bit of tape. But I know some people really don't like that. They don't like to see those materials. So I'm gonna let that sit for a little bit. Let's come back to that ballpoint pen thing. This might not work on a very thin paper, but you see, I've got, it's like a, what is this? It's just like a brush pen I got at the art store, but you know, you're gonna have to experiment. Yeah, this does pretty well. I think the key is having this kind of foam core to push against, but let's say I didn't have that. You could try this. And of course you can always manually shape. Yeah, so this is not as effective because it's not as deep, but you can see it still does some of its job. But what I mean by shape is, in this case, we have 7, 7, and I need a 6, don't I? You can always shape things by hand. Cardstock, this is a 65-pound weight cardstock. Isn't so bad. Let me make sure my camera's still, yep, camera's still there. It hasn't started recording my knee. You could do that, and if you're really picky and you really want your flowers to have a little more shape, you can take a tool like this. You could crimp. There's a lot of things you can do. I mean, if you didn't have this tool, I'm pretty sure you could take, again, the edge of this pen, do stuff like that. See? Now, let's do this one by hand. You could even fold it a little bit. Some of my earlier prototypes, I actually folded it and then I would curve it from there. I don't think it actually makes that much of a difference. It's just when you're in a rush, the method of the shaping tool, which again is either a paper craft tool you could find, or if you are a sculptor or you do cakes, actually, that's a fondant. You can find fondant tools that use this, but the problem is they sell you like 1 million of them when you only need like 2 or 3. For paper craft, you don't need so many precision. You don't need a whole set of 8, which is what the fondant people. Okay, so I'm not super in love with this, but we can always fix this later. I should actually leave it alone and let it dry. Let's find, I'll put this one back. I think the only thing that's tricky is the middle piece is a little bit rough. Now I think this cardstock that I'm including for the yellow might be slightly heavier because that's all I could find online. I had to go get this online. So my local craft store would not sell me one yellow. They wanted me to get packs of yellow and packs of 100, and no way. All right, so this is, it'll be fine. A lot of this stuff is finessed later, and I'm actually grouping these all up. So, all right, now we'll go back and do this other one. And it doesn't matter what mat I use. I'm gonna just put my glue on, do this, and I'll let it dry, but while my finger's here, I might as well. I want to shape the pen a little bit. I just push it around. And again, we'll come back to this. Oops. And that is why you don't mess around. I'll put the glue on here. I think that'll make it a little easier. Okay. I have a feeling I need to let it just sit for a bit. This too, for the sake of the video, I would probably wait a little bit longer, to be honest. You could put the glue there, or you could put it on the dot. Pushing it down, giving a little pressure, and then I'm gonna set it aside. So, all right, I'm gonna close this. It's gonna be messy. So I wanna talk about shaping. So this is this paper that you see here, and this had a lot of manual shaping after. You could see I used both the tool and I used my fingers. This is kind of where I'd like it to go, but sometimes you're gonna want a flatter effect for like packages, like I decided to do that. I'm gonna glue this guy on. Oh, I should have glued one and finished it. How about we'll do this? This one maintained a little bit of the shape, but it's again a lighter paper. It's a shimmer paper I was testing. I got off Amazon. I actually really like it. It's slightly heavy enough that it cuts nicely with the machines that I'm using to cut it, my home machine. But I'm gonna shape this a little bit. So these flowers, sometimes you can use like part of your hand. Look how small they are. Like I'm just cupping my hand to bring the paper up and encourage it to float up. Okay. It's not the order I recommend, but it doesn't matter. So I'm gonna put the little proof ball in. I don't think I used enough glue, because I have to make up for the fact that this is like kitty craft glue, so it's not gonna be as strong. It needs a little bit of time. It's not instant. All right, so I'll put that there. Again, you could just shape it like that. Or the other method is, if you really are anal, you can come in and just give the paper a bit of a nudge, and you know what? I want to encourage the middle, which is stiffer. It's the same paper as over here. So this one's actually heavier than the petals. So I'm not even really curling. I'm just pulling these up, coaxing them in like that. It's really simple. So there is another process that I'll talk about, give me a second. It's used to make these. It does not, unfortunately, this material is not a standard paper. This is actually iridescent wrap that's used for wrapping flowers, right? So when you go to a flower shop, or you go to the grocery store, you'll see this used, and it's really water resistant. It's nice, but it is a nightmare because it won't shape. So like all the tools I use here won't work on something like this. So this is constructed individually with each petal cut out and then cut so that you can glue it into a rounder shape. It's actually really not very fun. So I'll cover that in the future. But anyways, hope this is a good start, and thank you.